today I think I want to mess around with the drum rack. Not something that I usually use a lot, but now that I think about it, I have been doing a very similar thing with just grouping instruments and separating out their various, whoops, I wanted to duplicate that, not delete. Separating them out via the keys, which is something I tend to do a lot. But the drum rack is nice because it basically has that all set up for you. So let's go ahead and drag this into C1. And so it's a much more convenient way of creating a lot of different, obviously it makes sense for drums, but you can use it for melodies as well. And the drum rack is also cool in that it has this whole extra section for sends and returns, which is a really neat system. Just drag that in there. Yeah, so I think we can have as many returns as possible, or maybe not. Maybe there's a limit. Maybe it's like the returns here. You only have up to like 8 or so. Let's just try, see how many we can. Yeah, it looks like, I guess it maxes out at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. More than enough probably for this situation. Of course, we could have, you know, as many tracks as we want with different drum racks on it, and you can also, you know, group and get really nutty with the drum rack. And of course we could separate out so that only C1 goes to this drum rack, and we could put a random here, and it would then, so let's see, C1, if I play C1 here, I need to turn my keyboard. Let's see, do we got anything going through? C1. It's close. Like we're in the ballpark. Oh, so close. Nope. So. I just heard it. Oh, of course, yeah, I added this random. It's still early yet this morning, and so we could have multiple drum racks. Say one could have all the snares and a bunch of different types of snares, and with this random, or their chant set up high, we could just have a bunch of different snares firing off with each hit, and we could have one of these for kicks, one of these for hi-hats, one for toms. You know, you can get a really huge variety of different drum timbres. So that is one way to roll with it, but I think for today we're just gonna, I'll go ahead and ungroup this. You could also have drum racks nested within drum racks. Of course, that's another way to do it, which is even crazier because you have all these sends and return options at that point. Let's get down to business. I think everyone's thinking, finally, stop talking about random shit. Let's make some noise. Let's do something nutty. Always doing something nutty around here. So we've got one long MIDI note. I'm going to split that up using the arpeggiator, because why not? Let's get some fast notes there. Let's just go play with some presets real quick. Kind of like this one. And what do I want to do? Let's group that effect. Delete that. We've got ourselves a chain with a on-off speaker icon there. Call this gate. Who knows if this is going to sound any good, but it's worth a shot. Just kind of randomly leaving in some spikes there, and this being all the way up turns that speaker on. Gate speaker on. Although it's interesting, we're not hearing any notes here. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Could just be, let me go ahead and delete that track. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to pull this one off the grid, holding down the Alt key on PC. Not sure what it does on the Mac. It might be the Apple key. Whoops, we wanted to modulate this. I have a long longer modulation, maybe. Same with this. So what the music is kind of informing me to do, the idea that's popping up in my mind is to try a more melodic sketch here. Maybe we'll get into some beats at some point. But using a drum rack doesn't have to be for drums. I guess that's the gist of what I'm thinking of trying to explore. Is a drum rack not used for drums? Which seems odd, but why not, you know? Why have rigid guidelines? It's good to have guidelines, obviously, for yourself, so you don't spin out of, or, you know, get too bogged down with all the options. But in other ways, it's good to keep it free and open-ended. A balance between the two. I love these sins and returns. I wish we had these on regular instrument racks. Maybe one day. Alright, let's get another note going here. Ah, interesting. So the drum rack only shows up in here if you have things populated into the drum rack. And you get your name here. That's kind of useful. So let's add another collision in here. Well, this may be too much CPU, as one of my limits is trying to sketch on a very limited use amount of CPU. I throttle it. It's something that's built into Windows. You can set your, at least on I think most configurations of Windows, you can set your CPU down to 0%, which is, you know, not an actual 0%. on. But it definitely throttles it a lot. You know, you're very limited. Why, might you ask, in all of Hell's Insanity, would you actually choose to do that? Well, my thing is, if I can build, you know, a track here, or a rack, an instrument rack with that fits within that, then I can have a whole bunch of these in a live performance setting going on at once in a live performance setting. And so the throttling helps me sort of build things out efficiently. It's a weird way of doing things, but also, you know, I'm a weird person. So that could have a lot to do with the reason why I do it this way. Yeah. Everyone's got their idiosyncrasies, their oddities. Almost sounding a bit like Steve Reich kind of repetitive minimalism. And when working with melodies, I always feel like things take a little bit longer to sort of suss out a decent sounding melody that doesn't automatically, you know, sound cliched or stupid. And you know, that I think just takes a long time of listening to music, getting a sense of what you like. It's very easy to just do whatever, but I think obviously the strive, at least for most of us, is to do something that we feel has a lasting value, that has something interesting going on. Kind of like this percussiveness coming out of this. Let's pull up the knob a bit and get I want to pull in operator, but now I'm thinking I should try to use some of these ones that I just haven't really spent as much time with, just to challenge myself. The electric isn't my favorite out of the box. I think it sounds really cool when pitched down egregiously low. You get a growling, textural thing going on with the electric. But just out of the box, it sounds really atypical, like an electric piano, which I know is really useful for a lot of styles. So we've got the whole random thing going on now. I think we could put a scale after this and sort of restrict. It sounds just like some stupid random computer music. And scale is tricky. It looks really crazy, but once you get the hang of it, once you get the hang of it, it can be very... Again, I feel this electric is just not exciting out of the gate. The rolling rhythms are kind of nice. It drives the thing, gives it kind of a force. Almost too abstract there. Just playing with these knobs and hearing some of the differences of timbre as I'm going along and turning the knobs, I'm hearing, you know, across a 5-6 minute stretch of time, these just slowly evolving. And I think that's a nice trick or technique is to have modulations happen really slowly across a timeline. It is a form of minimalism, and for some it may be too boring, but you know, I've heard this technique used a lot in some of the droney ambient techno music, where you have, say, a hi-hat that's got a filter that's modulated really slowly, and it just keeps things moving. It keeps a timbre that evolves and changes over time, and that, to me, it makes music really interesting. Electronic music can be so stagnant easily. It's easy to just, say, have your drum rack with just samples, you know, and you're just firing off. And if, you know, you have enough samples, say you had this whole drum rack filled up, I think, you know, as long as you're not repeating certain samples too much, it could actually be really interesting that way. There's an artist that comes to mind. They're called Team Doyobi. They don't really put out stuff much anymore, but they had some really hot releases back in the early zeros, and I think they were using tracker software, but they had so many samples that would fire off throughout the course of a song that it was always very interesting to listen to their songs multiple times. You know, it really felt like, you know, there was so much effort put into their music, and their songs are really fast, really percussive, and very sort of, I want to say, almost clicky, glitchy IDM, minimal sounding IDM. Really impressive to listen to. So, you know, using samples, using, you know, one shots that don't really change with each time you fire them off can be effective, but I think in certain contexts they can really get old. Alright, so I am going to want to explore this idea of really long modulations. This kind of is reminding me of some stuff I've heard that was done back in, say, like the early 80s or maybe even late 70s computer music experiments, which, if you listen to stuff, you know, like, well, you listen to this, what I'm doing right now, to me it's not that interesting off the bat. I mean, we'll get there, obviously. I'm going to keep playing with this until I feel something weird and interesting is happening. But if you listen to those old, really simple sounding computer music releases, and you realize like what year they came out with, and you think about that context, it seems a lot more impressive. Just like, wow, I bet it was really, you know, hard for them to, they had to probably code in so much of that, you know. You didn't have like this whole easy, more intuitive DAW type interface. Again, sometimes a thing I like to do is to try and modulate or automate all of the knobs in some way. And that probably sounds crazy, but honestly, I think it's a fun little exercise. And once you get, it helps you learn, of course, the process of dealing with modulations. But also you can get some really crazy sounds out of it. Definitely teaches patience. You can hear what's going on now with this electric. A lot more interesting but subtle timbres coming out that I couldn't have gotten just by moving one thing at a time. It really is telling that once you start moving enough knobs at the same time, you can extrapolate interesting... Gosh, I really wish that Ableton had the little blue dot showing that, you know, a knob was... it's so subtle here to see what's being modulated, but you can sort of see that you've got this blue section moving. Ah, velocity. Let us play with some velocities. I feel like also here, I think on all of these, random velocity. We need to make sure we have velocity turned on. Looks like BV is turned on for just about all of these. I'm gonna want 2 here. Need some velocity on this. So generic. Let's see, what are some of our cheap tricks? I could throw a delay on there. And really crank up the feedback. We could try to get some... something I could hear kind of fading in, this effect fading in along the timeline, you know, 2-minute mark, and we start. I think the most interesting songs have a lot of automation. You know, just my opinion. Some people might think too much automation makes it too active and noisy. I really like I think, well, on that note, it's all about how much a person automates or how they automate. I think there's, you know, really chaotic ways of automating. You can do stuff that's really, you know, you almost have to really think about like what the effects are going to do. Anything with a feedback loop has to be modulated, I think, in some moderation. And it's crazy to me that they actually included a send to itself, which is, I guess we could do a feedback loop here, which is super crazy and awesome. Feedback loops can be really hard to tame, but they can also be really neat in the strange. Yeah, you can hear it looping back around and getting higher because we've got this 12th pitch here. And I think if we keep this is essentially our feedback knob. all this glitter feedback. And one thing you can do with a feedback loop to sort of break up the monotony of it is, well, let's actually try a phaser. Almost an organ-y sound coming out of it. And the phaser essentially, well, let's see if we can see what's happening here with our, we can see there's like a bit of movement there. You could sort of see it kind of moving around here. Phasers are cool like that. We could also try to pitch this down. We can automate this or modulate it however we want. The world is yours to modulate. And the more you modulate things inside of a feedback loop, the less, you know, feedbacky or tones jumping out you're gonna notice. Of course, we have this turned down to 8, and we could throw some boost in here. We could up. But you can hear it growing, getting a little crazy. But obviously put a limiter so it doesn't, you know, completely blow things out. It's, could turn this down. There's a lot of ways to tame a feedback loop. Now I feel this electric, it's a little mono. Let's go ahead and drop another delay in here. But this delay is going to serve the purpose using the Haas effect, H-A-A-S. Most probably know what that is anyway, but where we have one delay set all the way down and the other one is just up a little bit. And whichever side you add up, you can sort of hear it tilting to the other side. It almost feels like it's coming sort of at a distance from that side. And the more we push, it's almost like behind us a little bit. I like to sort of animate these to create a Haas effect that's moving more. Well, it's the sound of what we've got going on here is definitely fitting of this dreamy, abstract, cloud-like video, somewhat. I think these arpeggiated would sound much better with an actual played guitar, like if we had 4 or 5 guitarists playing at once and doing different arpeggiations, kind of all at the same tempo. Now this feedback loop is, I think we've got too much too much deep dive, pitch shift down. All right, so I'm going to do something a little odd and put a drum rack inside of a drum rack. I guess we touched on that just a little bit earlier. Let's try to see what happens. I'll just drop this here. And it's interesting, I don't feel like with this drum rack we're getting we've got the sends and returns. I don't feel like we got this list of stuff here. Let me... Which is interesting, and maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe if you nest a drum rack within a drum rack, you lose some of the functionality. You can obviously have different chains. Oh, and I guess, you know, we do have this here. It's almost like we want to set the drum rack up somewhere else because we lose this feature here when a drum rack is inside of another drum rack. I haven't explored drum racks as much as I wish I had. Yeah, I wonder why we lose that. It's too bad. I mean, I guess we don't. It's just we've still got some functionality here, but it's a bit like we lost some of the UI. Well, that's too bad. And maybe they fix that in Ableton 10? I don't know. Alright, so we got this feedback loop that's definitely kind of needs yeah, a lot of it might be the resonator that maybe if we move here, or maybe we'll get a more of a varietous sound. I thought I moved a drum rack back over here, but maybe I just deleted it. No matter. Let's put a collision in there. We're looking at C1. Ah, it's nice that we get this more filtered down. I wonder if the collision can do more noise hi-hat type stuff. I really just know I've said this a million times, but need to explore this here drum rack a lot more. So let's get some notes on this. Kinda noisy, yeah. Oh, it looks like a whole noise section here too. Maybe if we hi-hat it? Wow, okay, much different. Sorry about your ears there. Mine definitely couldn't handle a lot of that. Definitely a lot of options here. But very shaker-like, wow. Of course, there's a ton of bass also coming off of this, and I'm sure we could figure out where that's happening here. let us put a velocity here with some random. Oh, that bass is interesting. And of course, what I want to do is add in a bit of random on-off. So we'll do what we did earlier and map this to a speaker. Maybe too much off. And we can pull this off the grid and things will get even stranger, especially the farther along that this goes. The more all our modulated parameters will be out of sync, if you will. And some may come back farther into sync depending on how down the line you go. It's a lot to think about. Almost some kind of clavs, and there's a lot coming out of the collision, so that's cool. It's nice to know that there are other options to play with for percussive type sounds other than the operator. I didn't actually know we had all those tones coming off of It's nice when your kick, if you will, can also be a tonal, tonal thing that supports all the melodies. I think tuning, say like an 808 kick, is a really cool technique. And 808's kicks are known for their long tails and tonal qualities. Wow, we've got that repitch happening. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like the repitch is too obvious of an effect. When it's quiet or used on something like, say, the shaker, it could be interesting. Yeah, the echo seems to be really sucking the juice, and honestly, the collision is taking a lot. I love the new echo effect. We wanted to get rid of some of that tone on this and boost the bass. We could just EQ it. And add some overtones here. Sometimes it's, we're filtering out most of this, so I'm just curious what happens if we add in. So this is overdriving the overtones of this overdrive. Yeah, dynamics to me often sounds just too digitally. honestly not my cup of tea for the most part, this kind of music, but it's really fun to just mess around. Part of me is tempted to just get really weird and add some crazy effects that do a lot of strange things. I always like to try to push things into a far out into the Twilight Zone. As anyone who's watched some of the other sketch explorations has come to observe, I like to get weird. Life's too short not to just be free and try some new ideas. It's nice to, do a lot of stuff that sounds like whatever else is out there. Familiarity does feel good. There's something safe about it, something predictable and easy and comforting, if you will, about predictability. The best artists, I think, will have a bit of predictability, as well as, sort of push the boundary a little bit and have some moments of oddness. If you can mix the two together, you can get more people on board, I think, just a hunch, but more people on board enjoying your sound. I personally don't care about all that much. I mean, I suppose if you listen to my Off the Sky stuff, yeah, there's a lot of easygoing melodies and things that almost sound a little pop. So, I'm not one to talk, but I feel like I also, in some ways, try to put in some moments of some odd sounds, some weird textures. And certainly these sketch explorations have been a good exercise in terms of getting a little weird, pushing some boundaries, not really caring too much about what people think. That's not the point. We don't have to release anything here. There's no pressure. The idea is to just play around with some new ideas. I feel like this resonator only sounds not obvious like the resonator effect when you start to modulate or automate. Yeah, this right here almost sounds like the breakdown kind of at the end when you are trying to sort of make everything fall apart or modulate out of focus, which I think is one way to end a song. Let's go ahead and get rid of this echo. Been having a lot of fun with this chorus effect lately, with the rate times 20 turned on. All right, let's get in there. I think we need to pull this down in order for my hotkeys to work properly, because they're all targeting XY positions on the screen. Well, I'm noticing now immediately that the collision of instrument, albeit has so much dynamic range and interesting character, does use a lot of juice, and it's not something I think I would use a whole lot of in a live setting. And perhaps a lot of it is because I'm stacking so many in one track, and Ableton only designates one core per track. I wish the cores would be split up via chains, but I'm sure there's some good reason in the code why that is not feasible. Let's pull in my little thingy here. Okay, cool. Almost, I really liking this melody here. Run through that effect, it's almost starting to sound a bit like a series of wind chimes in the background. And then my go-to grain delay, gotta love it. I can't get enough of this thing. Really getting a lot of interesting high-end tone coming off this kick with this chorus pushed way up. I'm curious over here what I guess what will sound like if we mess with our feedback loop a little bit. Probably need a reverb on here. Just jumping around today in the random zone today. Some days are a little bit more aimless than others, it's true. When you sketch, you can't expect every time, you know, for yourself to create something that you just walk away with being like, wow, I did something monumental there. Some days are gonna just be drollish and not super as inspiring as other days, but that can't be the point. I really think it's important for artists to train themselves away from this notion of every time I sit down and do something, it has to be amazing. We have to be okay with just trying something new and learning something new, and there has to be a lot of joy in just that simple act. Otherwise, you know, we're going to get bogged down by the noise from our ego. Oh, the gamelan sounds coming off of this here. And now it's like wind rustling chimes through a tree. Looks like going with this idea. I wanted to have two separate auto pans. It's like we're pushing full on our... There we go. Now we got some stereo separation there. And I think from this glitter feedback thing here, we could try to pull the sound from the very end of it all, from after this resonator if we want. We can group this. And we can put a gate or a compressor, whichever effect we want that has this sidechain feature. And let's pull from post mixer here. Yeah, looks like we could maybe turn off one of these. Two of these. Do we need them all? Honestly, as they're running through this... They did add something, that's for sure. We could also use a looper. We'll call this Wind Through Trees. Call this Chimes in Trees. Very ambient, poetic piece. But as you hear, it's you know, it's interesting how where we started and where we ended up. I think it's really easy to drone out ideas and make things sound very ambient, very quick. And that could just be me because I've had a lot of experience messing around with ambient and drone ideas. But if you go back through here and you pull away some of these effects, then you'll start to hear some of the cool stuff that we did earlier. So, you know, if we remember kind of some of those movements, we could easily, you know, have a good 5-minute piece where we have a whole ambient section like this at the beginning or end. Stereo tremolo. I think I want to save this for a later use. Sounds like we've got some feedback happening up in here. Oh, but not. Interesting. I think it's just whatever spot we've got. It was, yeah, I think it's this spot here, or it wasn't modulating. That's where we were getting that straight tone happening. Kind of like some noise coming off of this bass. It almost sounds like we're recording from some old piece of gear that's struggling through the dusts of time. And the bit reduction, you know, oftentimes sounds pretty cliche, but sometimes it can add a nice little extra layer of dirt and noise. So I'll go ahead and automate some of this. I think only ever so often we want to pull it down. And let's I'm gonna really transform a piece and take it I'm gonna just mess around with adding a bit of output buffer, and this may eliminate some of the dropouts. Windows is a little finicky sometimes with buffer underruns. Obviously, you can use ASIO for all. That's a great utility, although it tends to hog the audio streams. So when doing video, it's a little more difficult to capture the audio ASIO for all. I think there are other solutions out there, ASIO solutions, that may be better, but ASIO for all is a freebie, and so I use it a lot. If you need to perform guitar or play the keys, you know, and have it be all like real tight with, you know, within a band situation, ASIO is the way to go. If you're just kind of mucking about like these sketches, I do feel that you know, having just a high buffer is no big deal. If you're trying to sync to video, you definitely want a low buffer, especially with Ableton, since you don't have any options to sort of nudge have a delay on the video playback. I mean, there are workarounds to that. Certain video codecs that work with Ableton, like I think it's FFD Show. Probably not saying that correctly, but I think there's a delay in there. And also you can, you know, video capture your video with OBS and use the OBS window, and there's delays inside of OBS. So there's a lot of dirty workarounds. I really hope one day Ableton adds more options for people wanting to score to music videos or films. Turn that off. Even with my utility, I forget that it's on. And it's flashing, and it's sort of, yeah. So we had all these. And we could do the classic. Classic filter sweep here. Some days I love to modulate, and some days I love to automate. Honestly, I just kind of randomly pick between the two. I think when I'm building stuff, I typically like to work with modulations if I'm trying to build stuff really thoughtfully, and then I'll use automations on top of that if need be. I like to work from the bottom up. Obviously, when you're just wanting to do stuff really quickly and, you know, get that instant gratification there, you know, turning on your clip and just, you know, pulling knobs around, I think is really the way to go, because you get results really fast that way. There are different reasons, you know, and different personal preferences are going to dictate that kind of thing. So there's no right or wrong way, honestly. I mean, there are definitely some better ways of doing certain things if you want to make it easier for yourself when it comes down to actually like tracking the song out and making it easier to work with for the end goal of getting it out there. God knows I've had to spend hours and hours, you know, taking some of my sketches and you know, you either can just mix them all down, but if you want to keep things non-destructo so that you can edit down the road, it can be a lot more work to set it up so that things are a bit more predictable when you're trying to track it out and get it ready to put on Spotify or wherever the heck you're going with it. SoundCloud, most likely. And I guess for the sake of a rhythmic ambient sketch, have a bit of like a let's pitch that up one more, that in key. Sounds like we got, you know, this panning, this tremolo thing isn't working great for, you know, typically you want your kick centered, but that's really just for if you want to put your stuff out on vinyl. To be honest, I don't feel that, you know, most people are putting their stuff out in a digital means, and, you know, so do whatever you want with your bass. Make it crazy all the way to the left, or you could wet and dry, like our tremolo effect can just be sort of half and half. Again, when sketching, keep it free, keep it loose, keep it simple. Do whatever you want. I guess the ultimate goal is try to make something that at least sounds interesting to you. I would used to spend hours and hours and hours pulling teeth. I didn't want to stop until I felt like I at least got somewhere that I felt good about. Kind of like when you're playing video games, you want to beat that level, you know. You want to. Sometimes you spend 8 hours and you feel really awesome about it. It's a weird psychological system of affirmations and rewards. But at least when making music, you know, if you follow that system, as long as you don't beat yourself up too much, you know, ultimately, if you do a little bit every day, every other day at least, you know, within several years, you'll get to a point where you can hit those affirmation marks pretty fairly quickly. I've noticed over the years the bar of quality sort of waning a bit in some ways. I mean, it depends on, you know, who you're listening to. Obviously, a lot of artists still like to push the boundaries of sound design, and let's go ahead and modulate this one. But I've noticed a lot of music getting a lot simpler, and you know, I think a lot of it may have to do with apps on phones and iPads, making it easy for people to just whip stuff out. You know, a lot of presets coming with DAWs, or, you know, obviously playing off of that human need for self-affirmation. And I think a lot of people are making music faster and putting less thought into it. And so the bar has kind of gone low, which is, you know, encouraging everybody else to sort of stick with that bar. I mean, as far as what people like in the clubs and dance music, it really doesn't take much, you know. There's like simple formulas, I feel like, that, you know, a 10-page paper could pretty much spell out like all the basics of what you need to do to make a track that, you know, really slams home. Obviously, the human voice in any music is going to automatically open up your tracks to a wider resonance with the masses, if you will. People want something to connect to in music, obviously, so having a human element in there helps with that. I love the sound of the female voice. I'm not going to lie. There's ever since the beginning, you can hear it in some of my earliest net label releases in the early 2000s. I love to, you know, I had friends who loved to just sing, and some of them weren't really good, but, you know, you drop some half-pitched, you know, half-decently sung vocal clips into Ableton, and it's not hard to just play with the pitches and get it, you know, all sounding really nice, honestly. And I still love working with female vocalists. The sound, the tone of that is really heartwarming. It feels good for me to hear it. You know, and if you're producing a track, you're going to listen to it. If you're serious about, you know, putting out a good quality piece, you're going to want to listen to that thing. You're going to end up listening to it hundreds of times. So you might as well make sure that you really love and can stand behind the sounds that you're working with. So that's one reason why I love female voice, is it just sounds really nice to listen to over and over again. See what we're doing on time. We've probably gone way over an hour and 3. I think we're about ready to call it on this one. It's not my favorite that we've done so far, but again, sketching shouldn't be about, you know, making the next best thing. It should just be about playing with ideas, you know, exercising ideas. For me, messing around with modulations and automations is always an exercise. A bit of a weird ambient techno sketch, especially with this resonator thing happening here. Let's see what happens when we turn it down. turn some of this glitter feedback up. And maybe we'll just make this happen every two. Let's make it happen every three. Let's try to throw it off the predictability train. Throw it off the grid a bit. What is happening here? Oh, this is our base. We'll call this Earth. Earth level. And then this is sonar. Echo. Wind through trees. Wind through. Sometimes it's nice to, you know, be thoughtful about naming stuff. Most of the time I don't really think it through too much. Wind through veins. Yeah. Sometimes I just like to kind of put random words together and see what happens. And maybe a little auto pan / tremolo here. Let's put it right before the resonator. And every now and then I want this to jump up. I always try to push myself to make a way for sounds to vary or be different across. I had trouble sitting still when I was a kid. This was a problem in school. So I mean, maybe this is, you know, indicative of that goal for me to make things kind of not sit still. We'll dial back some of this tremolo. And I think, for the hell of it, just save that as default. I like to do maintenance along the way, set things up for myself down the road to make things a little easier, a little better. It's always good to spend a little bit of time when sketching or doing anything, just trying to set things up for yourself to make it easier for yourself to do fun things down the road. Nothing wrong with that. We'll call this stereo tremolo container. Cool. And right here, really wish you could turn on the map at the parent and then go and map all the way deep down, and it would just circumvent this, you know, multi-layer level thing. Let me make sure I have this set up right. Ah, see, I knew there was something off about it. It was all pushed to the, we want to push this to the left, left, bounce left, right, bounce right. Okay. Ah, something was sounding off. Okay, that seems a bit more balanced. All right, I'm going to save this stereo tremolo for future use. Oh, I have record on. Not sure when that happened. Wow, it must have been recording for a while. I have no idea. Let's go ahead and delete that. Pull it up. And I'm just to be clean about it, I'm going to go ahead and delete everything in there. Yeah, always saying I'm gonna quit and then I just keep going. So I just have so much fun doing this. I really enjoy myself. I do love the grain delay. God, it's a dirty sound digitally. Again, I could render this thing out at 192, and I'll probably do some tests. Maybe next time I'll bring in 2 versions of something, one of the other sketches, and sort of compare and contrast the difference between a 192 render and a regular 48 render. I like working in 48. I think I've noticed with a lot of plugin saturations and resonators, a bit more shine come through, a bit more clarity in the high end. And I've read some papers and seen some YouTube videos talking about 48 as being a really good, 96 and 48, it's almost placebo between the two. So for, getting the most out of your plugins with CPU, working at 48 is better than 44. And luckily, Ableton has a really, really nice, since I think 9.6 or 7, and they implemented a really nice resample functionality. No aliasing, not very little aliasing. So, and if you're working on film stuff, then you're going to work in 48 anyway. But if you're just doing some, some basic type of music, or 44 is probably fine. But when rendering out at 192, a lot of times plugins will respond differently. A lot of distortions sound just more smooth. So I've noticed some things not sounding better at 192. So it depends on how they're coded. Atypical ambient techno ditty. All right, so I think I'm good to go. I did want to play a little bit more with the feedback loop effects in here, but I think we can play with some feedback at a different time. But until next time, keep sketching, keep having fun, keep being free about it. Don't push yourself too hard. Don't let that ego tell you how to feel. Just have fun. Try to learn some new things. Try and push yourself a little bit, but not too much. Don't ruin the experience. Try not to control things too much. You get the point. Make it a meditation. Make it relaxing.